This leads to a much more philosophically robust conception of anguish than we got in the introductory idea about anguish from existentialism as a humanism. In other words, Sartre is leveraging his ontology to explain what he takes to be the human condition. He says Kierkegaard, describing anguish in the face of what one lacks, characterizes it as anguish in the face of freedom. But Heidegger, whom we know to have been greatly influenced by Kierkegaard, considers anguish instead as the apprehension of nothingness. These two descriptions of anguish do not appear to us contradictory. On the contrary, the one implies the other. So here Sartre is saying that grasping your own nothingness and grasping your own freedom are the same thing. This is perhaps the cornerstone of Sartre's existentialism. So to get at this, we first need to distinguish between anguish and fear. Fear is fear of something. It's when you're afraid of an external object. And Sartre's example is if you're in the army and you're afraid of the oncoming soldiers. Anguish, on the other hand, is anguish over yourself or over your own possibilities. It's not being afraid of the enemy soldiers, but being uncertain about whether you'll be brave enough to face them down when the time comes. Anguish is a constant state for us because we are the gap between the past and the future, the no thing inserted in between those two modes. Therefore, our conducts are not determined by the past. If I throw a rock, then its trajectory is completely determined by the prior states in accordance with the laws of physics. But we are not like that. We do our best to determine our future activities according to our commitments. So, for example, you commit to graduating college, and you do your best to make sure that that commitment is what drives your behavior to study rather than to party too much, and so on. But setting a commitment is not at all like throwing a rock. Every day you face the new choice. You wake up and you say, am I going to study today or am I going to waste time? No matter whether you've set a commitment or not, that choice faces you down every day, indeed at every moment. Commitments then are causally inefficacious. Even if I commit to something, that is already in the past. The new future has sprung up, the new gap, the new nothingness. And my freedom trails with me through every moment. So he uses a very interesting example of vertigo. Here he's referring to the experience of peering over a great height and having a kind of dizziness overcome you. Sartre is arguing that vertigo is a kind of anguish. It's not that you're afraid of falling over, it's that you don't know whether you yourself will throw yourself over. Suppose you set out on a hike and you come upon a narrow pass overlooking a cliff. The fact that at the beginning of the hike you committed yourself to preserving your life has no causal efficacy in what your behavior will be as you actually go over the narrow pass facing down the cliff. Fear arises from uncertainty about what the outcomes outside of your control will be. There may be a rock that slips. Your path may be muddy and cause you to fall. A tumbling avalanche may come and knock you over. All of that is in the realm of fear. It's out there. You don't know whether that will happen, and that's outside of your control. But anguish arises from uncertainty over your own agency, uncertain about what your own motives, possibilities, and projects really are. But that's what makes us free beings. What makes something my possibility is that I might not finish it. Nothing determines me to do it. If I'm writing a book, what makes it my book is that I can sit down and write, or I could not sit down and write. The possibility of never completing the book conditions the possibility of being the author of a book. Thus, anguish consists in uncertainty over our own agency. I don't know how I'm going to be in the future, and I don't have a full, clear grasp on what's really motivating me, what projects all of my actions are really embedded in. That's something I can't really figure out until later on, and it's always being pushed off. So no matter how badly I might want something right now, no matter how badly you might want to graduate college, for instance, you may no longer identify with that commitment later on. So your sense of self is always shifting underneath your feet. The illuminating inversion here is this. The ancient Stoics tell us that the way to achieve peace of mind is to come to clearly grasp what's inside of our control, our own agency, and what's outside of our control, the outcomes that of our actions. You can apply for a job and do your best on your application, but whether or not you get hired is outside of your control. And you can drive yourself crazy worrying about those outcomes outside of your control. So the Stoics say, set aside your concern with the outcomes, just do your best with your own agency. Sartre here is flipping the picture. What really drives us nuts, what really gives us unrest, what really drives our existential anguish is uncertainty over our own agency. We're constantly making appointments for ourselves in the future. Tomorrow I'm going to study. Over this new year, I'm going to start eating better, I'm going to start exercising, and so on. And you may really identify with that idea. It may be something that's really driving you. But when we make these appointments, we don't know whether we're going to keep them. We don't even know whether we'll want to keep them. So the things that give your life meaning now, you won't know whether they continue to give your life meaning in the future. And indeed, it may be that those things disappear, but it also may be that your drive for them disappears. So it's not just the things out there outside of our control that's worrying us. It's that I don't have a clear grasp on what I'm going to be in the future. Indeed, what I am right now. In this way, Sartre's ontology, which sounded so abstract and unusual at first, gives us an innovative view of the problem of self-knowledge. Socrates' ancient injunction to know thyself is spurring us on to understand our own character, our own attributes. But our own character is inaccessible to us because we aren't a thing with attributes that could be defined in that way. We have no essence. We just have existence. This is the flip side of the coin. We're free to make ourselves, but then we can't really know who we are. If we could, we'd be able to grasp ourselves as a thing with this attribute or that attribute. In short, Sartre gives us a unique view about the possibility of self-knowledge. And this is unavoidable if Sartre's right. That's the point of his ontology. It's not some deficiency in our psychology, not something that could be fixed with enough therapy sessions. It's part of our being. It's our ontological constitution. It's just the way that we're inserted into this reality that makes us anguished.